It's the BookFest Fall 2022. Climate change. So this is how the world ends. I know I'm saying that with a little tongue in cheek, but really, the environment, things that are happening right now in the world are of such critical importance. And these seem very much like precarious times. So we're going to discuss climate change in our writing with authors that just seem to be converging on this topic with a range of books that include children's books and climate change fiction, cli-fi, as well as nonfiction. It's interesting how different writers, different pieces of literature are all coming together on this one so important topic. So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to start with Stephen Joseph. He is an award-winning adult and children's book author. We'll let Stephen introduce himself, and then we'll just go right around. Stephen.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Yes, I am an author of right now 3 books. I'm a lawyer by day, so that's what I normally do. So I have The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus, A Grown-Up Guide to Effective Crankiness, the Crankosaurus Method, and my last book, Snoodles, Kidoodles, Poodles, and lots of Noodles. So yes, I'm an accidental author, but I have fun doing it. I focus on crankiness, effective crankiness. That is my brand. Of course, if the world is coming to an end, probably people will be a little cranky, and not effectively cranky. And that's probably how I ended up writing Snoodles, Kidoodles, which is more an optimistic view of how things could be.
Yeah. And it's for children. So it has an undertone, and it's something that kids can enjoy as well as adults. And I love that too. It's like you fell down. You're an accidental author. You fell down and suddenly you stood back up and you're an author. That's awesome. All right. EA Smeraldo. She is a novelist and a musician and a nuclear engineer. Hi, EA. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on. And I am a nuclear engineer. I have always had a creative streak, though. So I've just favored music and writing and nuclear engineering. And my novel, The Silent Count, kind of allows me to combine all 3 because one of the main characters in the novel is a musician. So there's all kinds of song lyrics laced in it. And there is actual science in the novel. I was inspired by some work and some studies I've done in the past. Of course, it's meant to be satirical, but I think my novel, the point of it is to get people to think as well as be entertained, like really think about what's going on in the world. And it's not just what we can do about climate change. It's what we can do about our culture, our divides, our lack of agreement on things. We have to figure out a way to get together and move forward. And there's a problem right now where people just aren't trusting each other. We don't trust our elected leaders. So I think my novel kind of hones in on that.
Yeah. And I think that's something important to point out. That even in this panel, we're all coming at this from a different perspective, but this is something that's going to affect us all. Climate change is real, whether you believe it or not, and it's affecting us. And this is something we have to come together on. I couldn't agree more. Lucia Matuonto is a children's psychotherapist, a podcaster, and the author of children's books. Hi, Lucia. You want to say hi to everybody?
Hello. Hello. I'm very happy to be here today, and thank you, Desiree, for inviting me. As Desiree said, I'm a writer. I'm also a podcaster, and I'm the host of the Relatable Voice podcast and Uncut with Lucia, where I interview authors, storytellers, wordsmiths like EA and also Stephen. So I've published a series of books entitled Zoe the Crab. It's a series of 3 books. And also my latest children's book is Out of the Box. So the title is inspired by the fact that we need to think out of the box. whether it's a new way of approaching how we deal with climate change, or a new way of approaching how we talk about climate change. But we can't be afraid to make change, to make a change.
Yeah, yeah. And I think talking about somebody who approaches the topic from out of the box, Stuart Waldner is an activist and an author, and he's not holding back any punches. He's inviting readers to take the red pill in his book. Stuart, hi, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Desiree. It's an honor to be here and a pleasure to be in the company of such talented people. I had no idea. I'm a first-time writer, and for me, I feel like the Earth is at a crisis point, and it's a 5-alarm fire, and it's all hands on deck kind of time. From climate change, which we're talking about today, to emerging infectious diseases, biodiversity loss, environmental degradation, our declining health, mass extinctions, the list goes on. And it can be really depressing to think, how can one person, possibly make a difference when all these things are going seemingly horribly wrong on our planet. And the really amazing thing that I learned while researching my book is that all of those things and more are connected to the food on our plates and choices we make in the grocery aisle. So Desiree, I've read tons of studies on climate change, the environment, health, nutrition, and animal welfare. And I realized I could no longer sit on the sidelines. I needed to do my part to help mitigate the damage I was seeing all over the planet and in the lives of people I cared deeply about. And that's what inspired me to write this book. It's a book that I hope people will find is a compassionate, science-based, call it like I see it kind of book. I don't hold any punches, but I really think that my hope anyway is that it will encourage people to choose the red pill to escape the matrix. And what I mean by that is, we were born into the matrix, and I'm using the Matrix movie, The World in the Matrix, as a metaphor for our world. So in the Matrix, artificial intelligence had taken over the planet and was using humans as an energy source. Well, I say humans have taken over this planet, and we're using farmed animals as our energy source. So that's why I call the world we're living in the matrix.
Absolutely provocative and so interesting. Now I'm going to start with EA, and more specifically, EA, can you talk about your approach to climate change in your books? Why you chose this perspective? Because it's fiction. It's also got that satire, kind of like a cutting, dark-ish comedy to it. Can you talk about that a little bit? And then we'll go just around again and have everybody answer the same question.
Well, my book refers to a situation where they want to use technology to solve the environmental crisis that is happening at the time. The book was originally meant to be set way off in the future, but the problems we have with climate change got so bad that by the time I was really into writing it, I thought this is really more like the present. So I had to make some adjustments there. As you know, I'm a nuclear engineer. I do favor, using clean burning energy sources, such as nuclear power, but also other types of renewable energies. I think, though, that, maybe geoengineering is something we can consider. We just had the situation with the comet that the NASA crashed into it to test out how we can use technology to stave off some other types of problems. So, the future, think of where we were 20 years ago. We wouldn't be having this conversation because we didn't have very good communications like this. We didn't have iPhones. Now, it's unthinkable what life was like then. It just seems like a blink of an eye. So I'm hoping that in the future, we will have technologies and they'll be more highly developed, and there'll be more incentive to produce things that will save us, I hope.
Well, I hope so too. You're right. I'm Gen X, so the climate changing has always been there. We always heard about it. And it does seem like all of a sudden, wow, it's here. They did warn us. And gee, what the heck was wrong with us as, a species, as humanity, for just kind of taking so long to do anything about it? Lucia, I want to go to you because of your approach in your writing. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach climate change in your book, Out of the Box, and all your books, as a matter of fact?
In reality, because I wanted to inform children about climate change, I chose to write my story in a way I would appeal to them. For example, Out of the Box is about two young siblings who live in a very, very polluted city called Greytown, which is enclosed, and they have never been outside of their city walls. One day, their dog runs off and digs a hole under the city hall and enters Greentown, which is super green. It's completely the opposite of Greytown. So the siblings follow the dog and enter the city, and they've never seen something like this before. So they start to realize that everything that's wrong with Greytown, once they discover how clean Green City is. In reality, I show two completely different cities and the way their citizens live. So the children can compare with both cities and draw their own conclusion. For example, Greytown has many pharmacies, 8 pharmacies on each corner, for example. They have many industries and hospitals. And its inhabitants, they are super proud of it because they were taught that having many hospitals and producing canned food and medication mean that they are rich and self-sufficient. On the other hand, Green City has many gardens. They produce their own food, and they don't need many pharmacies and hospitals. So the children, they start comparing both cities, and they start thinking, what is most important? Yeah. So my way to approach the kids is making them think critically and compare one situation with the other, and start thinking that they need to start changing not only them, we all need to change our behavior. But what my way to approach is to show, and they can compare both situations.
Yeah, everybody here seems to have that very definitive duality of showing both worlds, right? That's really a theme that you all have going on. Stuart, probably, the same thing, red pill, blue pill. It's such a metaphor, right? Do you want to add, I know you told us, the inspiration for the name of the book and the Matrix, but could you please continue? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to just refer back to something EA said was clean burning fuel. And I know she was talking about energy production, but that also pertains to the fuel we feed our bodies. And there's certain foods that are clean burning, and there are certain foods that aren't. And animal-based foods are not clean burning in our bodies. And that's why we get sick from eating them over the course of a lifetime. So, the blue pill and the red pill is a choice. And I think, we were all born into the matrix. And so eating animal-based foods seems natural to us and even necessary and nutritious. And we've been indoctrinated into this way of thinking. I don't know a single person who made the conscious choice to eat an animal-based food. That choice was made for us by our parents and grandparents. No one woke up one day and said, I'm going to still the milk that's for that baby cow and start drinking it myself. No, this is something that's been normalized to us through being taught how to eat from our parents and in school and in society and through marketing and the media. So we don't always think we have a choice, because it's like an operating system on a computer. It's just running in the background all the time, and you don't pay any attention to it until you have a virus, and all of a sudden you've got to pay attention to it. Well, the earth has a virus, we're having to pay attention to climate change. And so I'm encouraging people, we have a choice, to choose the blue pill is tantamount to maintaining the status quo. And we know how that's going, right? It's also continuing to line the pockets of some of the wealthiest 1%. These companies are huge. They get gigantic government bailout money, handouts. The beef industry in 2019, the government gave them $9 billion in direct and indirect payment. And then we're paying for the products, and then we're paying for it for our health. So it's the blue pill is tantamount to just lining the pockets of the wealthiest 1%, fueling our health, declining health. And what I say is tantamount to just watching the planet burn. The science in my book says that there's no way we can avert the worst case scenarios of climate change without a widespread adoption of a plant-based lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it's all explained in detail in my book, which I hope people will pick up.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is this is so serious. And then we go back to the idea that taking it with a little bit of humor to try to wake people up, and approaching children to help educate the young people. So Stephen, I'll segue over to you, because you're probably on the other side of the spectrum, and you're taking this with so much humor, and you are the crankiness expert. We all know that. So talk about your approach in kind of trying to lighten the mood and using metaphor and allegory and all those delightful tongue twisters in your writing.
Well, yes. So in the Snoodles Kidoodles book, the cars were all running on sauerkraut, and everyone is getting stinky and cranky. And there was this inventor, Herbie Snoodleman, who invented the Snoodle, which runs on noodles. And not only that, you come home and you press a button and you have a nice hot bowl of noodles, fresh noodles to eat. So it was this optimistic, of course, everybody's happy, the air is clean, the skies are blue. And in my next book, it continues. And it's important because the next book, it adds into the concept of people poo-pooing. And I think that's important with global warming, because I was talking to my daughter the other night, where I said there's three groups. There's groups that believe in global warming. There's another group who don't believe in it. And there's a middle group that says, well, I believe in it, but I don't think we could do anything about it. So and my daughter goes, yeah, I think I'm in that middle group. And I think there's a lot of people like that. And so, well, like, what's the point? We're just going to all whatever. So in my next book, a Snoodle, the Zoodle Kidoodles, and One Happy Schmoodle, a Wackadoodle Tale from Outer Space. The Zoodles, in the planet Zoodle, they used to have the most brilliant brain surgeons and the most brilliant rocket scientists in the whole galaxy. But what happened, these brain surgeons and rocket scientists, they became arrogant, and they would always poo-poo everybody. Oh, it's not brain surgery. Oh, it's not rocket science. And until people were so intimidated that the planet Zoodle had no more brain surgeons and rocket scientists left. There was zero. And that was a problem when Kloodle, the grand roodle of the planet Zoodle, became a wackadoodle. And this is according to Dr. Quackadoodle. So they ended up abducting two Earthlings who always would say, it's not brain surgery, it's not rocket science, thinking that they happened to be a brain surgeon and a rocket scientist. They weren't. They were bakers. But anyway, my characters from the first book helps save the planet. There was these vacuodoodles over the planet that would vacuum all the noodles from the planet, leaving the planet noodleless. And we're able to get into outer space with the invention of the prickly peppered purple propulsion powered pickle. So
Can you guys imagine living in Stephen's head? Like right now, I'm just like, whoa.
My
So,
face hurts from smiling so much. You're making me.
so anyway, it's basically not to poo-poo things and always be optimistic and be creative. So that's I guess the approach that I take with global warming, an optimistic approach that you could just say give up, it's going to happen. Well, we can't do anything about it. I still want my burgers, that sort of thing. But maybe we could find a way and at least encourage kids to think along those lines.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll stay on the kids theme and we'll bounce over to Lucia too. Because, well, you and Lucia, Stephen and Lucia both have children's books. And so that's mostly your target audience. What did you find in writing mostly for children? What was your methodology there and some of the things that you had in mind when you were speaking to that target audience? Lucia, I'll start with you.
What can you repeat, please? Sorry.
What were you thinking of in writing your book for children with them as your target audience? In other words, your approach to writing to kids and that, yeah.
Yeah, actually, children are my passion. And as you said, I've been treating kids for many years. And what I realized that sometimes we leave kids off, like in a sense that we don't talk to them about really important problems. Sometimes we lecture them, but not really educate. And I think that, for example, Zoe the Crab, my first book, is focused on inclusion and some climate change themes, but I wanted to devote a whole book specifically to our environment. And I believe that empowerment, education empowers all people, but especially motivates the young to take action. And our kids are the ones that will be most affected in the future. So by talking about climate change with the kids, they can start acting in a more proactive way. So that's why I decided to write a book about climate change for kids, because I believe they are the ones that are most interested about it. And as everybody knows, they are the future. And it's just because we always done things in a certain way does not make it right and change. It does not make it right and change is possible. So if we did it all wrong for many years since the industrial revolution, doesn't mean that kids they will keep doing what we are doing. And the best way to educate these kids is through books, because books, when they see the illustrations, it's like the illustrations are talking to them. And I believe that it's a very special way to learn about important things.
Yeah, yeah. And the idea that hope is eternal and hope is not lost. I'll segue over to EA because I know you have a powerful theme of, even though your humor is a little bit on the satirical side, underneath it all, you do feel, and I'm asking you this professionally too, you are a nuclear engineer. You're one of those scientists that Stephen was just making fun of, I think. You want to talk about this idea of hope and the hope for the future that you not only instill in your writing, but hopefully that you have too.
Well, I see these young people coming up. Like my nephew is over at Virginia Tech, and he's majoring in machine learning and whatever it is these kids are doing. I don't even know. It's so esoteric to even me. I mean, nuclear engineering is one thing, but these artificial intelligence is pretty out there. So yeah, I see how they just want so much for the future. They're all so passionate and driven, and I see that our future is in those young people, because let's face it, The current generations, they've just squabbled, kicked the can down the road, haven't really, now we're scrambling and we're acting like this is a serious issue. But, we should have been at this quite some time ago, as you probably all agree. I know as a nuclear engineer, there was a time when they wanted to build more plants, probably around 2008 timeframe, and then they stopped. Now, some of it was because of the Fukushima issue in Japan, the tsunami, but part of it was also because natural gas due to fracking became so cost effective. So the market drives a lot of what we do, at least in the United States. And there's no plan. There's just let's do what's cheapest and what's profitable. So, I'm all for making a profit, but not if it's going to cause untold problems down the line. Okay, if you're going to do that, make sure you've got a carbon capture technology that works, that's cost effective. Do we have that now? We don't. I know there's people are really hoping for it, but so I see hope, though, in these young people coming along, because I know that they are they believe climate change is real, and they know it's going to impact them in the future. So my hope is that somewhere in that group is the visionary that's going to come up with some great ideas and see them through.
Yeah, I love that message of hope. And you bring up costs and you bring up money, and we're kind of dancing around this. I see Stuart nodding his head a lot. I think you and Stuart just need to hang out. You're both kind of on the East Coast, close enough to each other, meet in the middle there. But Stuart, I'll segue over to you because I would love to hear your thoughts on, what's really driving some of this, and, the physical cost of it, as well as, what's going on maybe politically and behind the scenes in Washington. If you want to discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, thanks. I want to say, in my beginning of my book, I say I'm discussing some inconvenient facts and unpleasant truths. But it's ultimately a book of hope because, adopting a plant-based lifestyle is the single solution to so many of these problems. And the science in my book explains that in greater detail. And there are powerful corporations that are making money. And of course, they're looking out for their bottom line. They want to continue making money. They're not concerned about our health or the health of the environment. And I mentioned earlier, just, the amount of money that the beef industry alone received from the government in 2019. And so the meat industry does get a lot of funding from the government through subsidies, and it makes their products affordable. And, meat without these subsidies would be a luxury item. And it still is a luxury item. It's just that we're not paying the cost up front. I really like what Business Insider said in an article. Says a hamburger isn't something bought and paid for today. It's a symbol of a debt that one day must be repaid. And I think Lucia was talking about future generations. Everyone living in the matrix, everyone eating animal-based foods is increasing. They're adding to that debt every day. So if you're a parent or a grandparent and you want to ensure that your children and grandchildren have a world that can support human life, then you owe it to them to escape the matrix, choose the red pill, because continuing to eat in the matrix is just guaranteeing that your children and children's children are going to inherit a debt so vast that they could never repay it. So I really encourage people to take the red pill. There are these forces at play. The government, big corporations, they don't want us to change. The media doesn't report about what's happening. They talk about energy generation, solar and wind, and they talk about transportation, planes, trains, and automobiles, but they don't talk about food production. The Lancet Journal, which is a weekly peer-reviewed medical journal, said that the greatest threat to the stability of our planet is global food production. That shocked me. I've never heard anyone report that in the news. They're talking about wind generation, solar panels, but no one's talking about food. And that's why I really felt compelled to write this book, because I think it's so important. And I'll just end with one statistic that blew my mind in researching this. So Oxford University determined that if everyone became plant-based on the planet, we would reduce agricultural emissions by 70%. That's how much of an impact eating in the matrix contributes to climate change. So it's a simple choice. We have a choice. We don't need animal-based foods to live. In fact, the United States Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics says plant-based foods contain all the nutrients we need to be healthy at any stage of life. So I invite people, there is hope, and it starts with our choices with the food on our plate. That's where it begins.
Yeah. And I really like the fact that you have an action item for people, because all too often people are like, well, there's nothing we can do. They're the ones who do feel all hope is lost. What could I possibly do? And you're like, hey,
Right.
if everybody did this, this is what we can all do. And there's going to be some real changes. And
It's never been easier. It's never been easier, Desiree, or simpler. I mean, there's so many plant-based food products coming to the groceries today that, it's just a matter of, moving over one row to get a plant-based milk instead of cow's milk or something like that. I mean, it's ridiculous how easy it has become. I started this in 2008, and it was okay then, but it is the last 2 or 3 years, it's become so easy, and it's delicious. It's tasty. It's, this is not your mother's vegan food, let me tell you.
Yeah. I just got to say, the coconut-based milk, the coconut milk ice cream, oh my God, it's the best thing ever. It really is. Okay, how about this question? I'm going to pose this to everybody, and I'll start with Lucia. If you could give a copy of your book to anybody in the world, please don't say Oprah. Everybody says Oprah. You can't say Oprah. If you could give your book to anybody in the world who would hopefully read it and, do something and help them wake up, who, Lucia, would you give your book to?
I would give my book to Greta Thunberg. I would like to know her opinion about Greytown, the polluted town, and what she would do if she was living there. And also because she's a voice of the younger generation, she can reach young people, and my book could be a resource used to reach them. She could promote my book, and my book could be a source of knowledge for this. And I really believe she's doing an amazing work by mobilizing this generation to change the world. Yeah, I would give my book to her, of course.
Awesome. Stephen, how about you? Who are you handing a copy of your book to?
Oh, well, I have to find the scientist or inventor who could actually take my idea and invent an actual Snoodle that runs on Noodles. And so if I could find that person, and then all motor vehicles could run on Noodles, and we could just go to the Raminoleum to fill up our cars, that's the person I would want to give my book to.
So if the Snoodle mobile inventor is out there somewhere, you need to contact Stephen Joseph. That's
right. Yes.
EA, how about you?
I think I might give it to Al Gore, just because, people have said many different things about Al Gore throughout as long as we've known him, which is a long time in the political world. But he has put so much effort into getting the message out for climate change. And, he was right on so many counts. And it's just that when he started talking about this, everyone said, oh, wow, well, we'll give him a Nobel Prize and we'll, send the movie out into the theaters. But no one really did much. So now everyone's seeing these repercussions of what's going on in the world. So I probably would give it to him and ask him what he thinks about geoengineering. he thinks that that's a possibility for change. He still has a podium, so to speak, to get messages out. So
Yeah,
he's a good
absolutely.
guy.
Have you met him?
No, no, but, well, we won't. Less said about what happened to him in 2000. The better.
Right. Well, it's it's one of the things that Stuart talks about in his book too, is the marketing messages that we hear, the messaging, whether it's marketing messages or in the media has, and certain factions in our world, again, have put out those messages. And in many ways, he was vilified and made fun of. And it's really easy to poke fun of somebody and then take away their strength and their power. Stuart, how about you? Who would you hand a copy of your book?
Wow. There's so many people. But I was thinking about this, and I think Billie Eilish, I would love for her to read my book. She's an outspoken plant-based advocate, so I think she would really resonate with the message. And she has such a following that I think, she could really help my book's message get out there in a bigger way. And I think her audience is younger, so I think the younger generations are more open and more receptive to the ideas I put forth in my book. So I think Billie Eilish.
Absolutely. Yeah, she'd be a great choice for you. Now, in touching on those marketing messages too, one of the things that I like that you can do, or that you do, Stuart, is bring those out in the book. Can you throw a couple of those at us? I just want people to kind of feel the powerful impact of what we are talking about. Can you do that?
Yeah. So for instance, one of the fascinating facts that I have at the end of every chapter in my book, there's a sidebar that says fascinating facts that kind of recaps some of the big points in the book. So one that comes to mind right now that pertains to the environment is that it takes 100 times more land to produce 1 gram of protein from pork or beef than from tofu. Another one is 80% of the protein that we feed to chickens and 96% of the protein that we feed to cows is lost. We never get that protein back.
Yeah. And some of those marketing messages too, we've heard them all our lives, and it just goes to show how powerful they are.
They're really powerful. Yeah, beef is what's for dinner. Yeah, exactly. I took my partner to the doctor the other day, and she was just having a follow-up to her with her allergist, but they had a TV on in the room, and I was really surprised because beef is what's for dinner. That campaign has been relaunched again, rebranded with Tony Romo, who's this, All-American NFL former quarterback, a leader of men on the field. He's macho, he's tough, he's, we got to listen. He's an authority. We listen to what he says. He's the new spokesperson for beef. It's what's for dinner. And so this is intentional. It's very clever and it's very effective. They picked the perfect person to represent beef, because it is associated with prestige and wealth and authority and strength. And, and this is the messaging that we all grew up with. And, we don't really see it until we take the red pill. And when we see the red pill, it becomes very, very clear. People living in the matrix sometimes don't really see some of the things, but when you can step back and look at the world from a different perspective, then you can see some of these forces that are, continuing to keep us addicted to their products while we ignore, all the harm that they're creating for the planet and for our health and certainly for the animals.
Absolutely. The incredible edible egg, right? Pork, yes. The other white meat, got milk. Think of how those slogans and those sayings have permeated our culture. They're some of the most recognizable marketing messages that we have, I think, in the Western world. And if you start thinking about the world and those messages and what's been put out there in that way, I think that's where all of you need kudos and props for putting your books together, because you're counterbalancing some of those messages that have been put out there in so many ways. And again, it's that duality, it's that other perspective, it's taking that red pill, so to speak. So, okay, I'm going to give you a chance to all just go around. I'll start with Stephen with parting thoughts. Anything that you wanted to get off your chest that we didn't get a chance to talk about? Anything that you want to tell people about your book, about your writing, anything that you've got coming up? Stephen, go ahead.
Well, I also have another adult book coming up. This is a follow-up to A Grown-Up Guide to Effective Crankiness, the Crankosaurus Method. It's called Cranky Superpowers, Life Lessons Learned from the Common Crankosaurus Chronicles. And just on what Stuart was saying on themes, like one story, I retell the exodus of the Jewish people from Egypt to Israel. It took 40 years. And I tell it in a funny way because they got the brochure and it said, please be forewarned, while we hope for the best, we will only prepare for the worst. So it like every time they get to some kind of problem, Moses would say, well, we hope for the best, but we only prepared for the worst. Like, do you bring a map? No map. Yeah. So they finally got to the land of Israel. One of the foods they had was borscht, and they figured out if they just drip the borscht along where they've been, they won't keep walking around in circles. And that borscht line became known as the Borscht Belt, by the way. So they finally got to the land of Israel, and they met other cranky inhabitants, and they had a big party, and they realized that if it's better to prepare for the best than just hope for the best. So then they would be kind of less cranky, of course. So so I guess that's my parting thought. That is, sometimes it's more important to prepare for the best. And a lot of times, like you see a lot of people just hope for the best, and they end up with the worst.
Prepare for the best. I love it. EA, how about you? Parting thoughts.
First of all, I just want to mention for Stuart's discussion has really made me think. My father is almost 90, and he just went to the cardiologist, and the cardiologist said, you are in perfect health. You're like a 30-year-old. And he stopped eating meat ages ago, years and years ago, and lives on mostly Sicilian peasant food that I make for him. But my novel, The Silent Count, is out, and it will keep you up, turning the pages all night long. A lot of people, their bedtimes were just shot. And also it has a little soundtrack of some music that I created that the lyrics are laced through the novel. So if anyone's interested, that's at my YouTube channel, EA Smeraldo. And I've got, I was asked to curate an anthology of climate fiction stories for the United Nations. It will be distributed to the United Nations Conference on Climate Change delegates, and that will be happening in November in Egypt. So those it's called No More Fairy Tales, and the anthology will be available to the public sometime after that. So that's something you might be interested in as well.
Excellent. Yeah, we love those books that keep us up all night long, turning those pages, don't we? Lucia, how about you? Closing thoughts.
I just published an anthology with myself and more 13 authors, and they were some passages from my podcast, which is the RV, is the Relatable Voice podcast, and they are short stories. We have 23 short stories, and our intention is to make people smile, because we've been coming from difficulties, these last 2-3 years, and we thought about some stories that we could lift up people, and then Relatable Voices anthology was created. So it was just published 2 weeks ago, and I am writing the sequel of Out of the Box. And also the podcast now will start being videotaped, not only audio but also on video, And yeah, and I am also writing a new book, which is called Homegrown Superheroes. And it's a funny story with superheroes that their powers are not really great powers. So it's just something to make people smile as well. Thank you.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Lucia is a woman with a lot going on. Trust me there. Stuart, how about you? Closing thoughts.
Yes, I like what Lucia was talking about, superpowers. And it made me think about, in the Matrix movie when Neo escaped the Matrix, and after he regained his strength, he had abilities and powers that, that we had never seen before, certainly not in a movie. It was amazing. So my closing thought is for people is that, we have superpowers. Our bodies have the ability to heal themselves. We just need to give it that proper fuel, as EA was saying earlier. We need to feed ourselves nutritious food, and doing so will give us the superpowers. And then, the benefit is that doing that helps the planet and helps the animals. It's what I call a win-win-win. So I'll just kind of leave everyone on that upbeat, positive note. And I just want to say that on my website, stuartwaldner.com, you can play the Matrix quiz, which is fun. You can test your skills to see if you have what it takes to be an oracle within the Matrix.
Oh yeah, the Matrix quiz is a lot of fun. I've taken it myself. It's a good time. And I just wanted to say, you guys, you are all superheroes for writing your books, sharing your messages with the world. It's powerful, it's important, and it's so timely. Thank you guys for being with us on the BookFest. I appreciate you all. And thank you, everybody. The BookFest continues. We've got more coming up for you. More bookish adventures here on the BookFest Fall 2022.